I a vegetarian? No, I am not a vegetarian. I was going to say yes and no, which is true for my experience. But it wouldn't be accurate in terms of how you understand it. So I am not a vegetarian. I eat meat. And if you are or not, why? So many teachers seem to regard to the eating of meat as a sign that one is somehow still in the dark. Well, this is an interesting way for me to have challenged myself for this life. I've always had a really strong desire to not eat meat, like a very strong inclination, not desire, inclination, I would say, rooted in my light, in my love, in my kindness, as comes natural to me. So from the point of view of the mental body or of the mind, where I see, okay, in order for me to eat meat, an animal has to be killed. I don't want that, right? It's very obvious. Many people share that. Even those that eat meat and that don't intend on becoming vegetarian sometimes have this reflective moment of, it's a little bit sad, but it's the way it is, or something along those lines. So this is not unique to me, but for me it was especially strong. I have been vegetarian for years. When I was 13 or 14, I told my parents I didn't want to eat meat anymore. So we all became vegetarians. That was cool. Thanks, Dad and Mom. So for maybe 4 years I was vegetarian, like strictly. It did have its effects on my body, negatively. And honestly, my constitution on the physical level really, really crazed me. Like before I became a vegetarian, it was my most favorite thing in the world. Before I was conscious of what really was going on, I would love to, stay over at my grandma's and she would bake me this like a whole package of butter would go into that, and then like a steak. That was the best thing ever, steak. And still, I love steak. It's like amazing. Like something about my constitution, like, love that. And it's a real like love experience. When I eat steak, like there's no other foods that gives me such a profound sense of love and dissolution and satisfaction on a physical level. It really like complements me. So what I've come to understand is that I've created this dichotomy for myself, this paradox, and this can be a good example of how you do that on many levels for yourself. Where I gave myself the mental complex of I absolutely don't want to eat meat, and I gave myself the physical energetic complex of I absolutely want to eat meat. And then there you go. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you compute that? How do you find balance in that? And there's many aspects to this, and many I can't even touch upon. But such a simple thing, seemingly such a simple paradox, have given me so much rich understandings of myself and balances. Just as one thing, and there's many things like that, many paradoxes in my life. So if you know how to utilize these paradoxes, you can learn so much from each and every one of them. They are a complete library in and of themselves, about your life, about life in general, about what is balance between love and wisdom, etc. For example, I feel very strongly if I did not give myself the composition of absolutely craving meat and thriving on it physically, I would have been inclined to become judgmental of those that do eat meat. Because it would have been very easy for me to be vegetarian. It would not make sense, and I would state, like many other teachers, and also my role as a spiritual teacher obviously added another element to this, because I know that judgment is out there a lot, that image is out there a lot. So it gave me another reflective side. But if I would not have had this strong desire to eat meat physically and energetically, if it would not complement me as much, I would have very likely fallen into the idea that somehow vegetarianism is part of spirituality, and that it ought to be there, or it should be there, or it's highly recommended, or encouraged, or it's better than. I'm not saying I would last at that stage, but it would have been for several months or years or whatever. It would have been part of my makeup and part of my expression, which is out of balance, honestly. It's out of balance with love and wisdom, in my experience now. So I forced myself to come to a balanced state in that sense. So many teachers seem to regard the killing of bugs and the eating of meat as signs that one is somehow still in the dark. Your teaching suggests that there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. There is efficient ways to go about things and non-efficient ways to go about things, but neither are mistakes. They all add to the expansion of creation. So how can these be mistakes? Well, they're not mistakes. And you have to listen to your own resonance, and what's the lesson in that for you? And right now when I eat meat, it really is a love-making experience, and there is a lot of blessing involved in it as well. Like, not every time, but I would say 9 out of 10 times, there is a very conscious love relationship. I actually tune into the consciousness of that particular creature, and I bless it, and I see it in light, and all that. So it So for me, I've come to this balanced state where I actually experience it as lovemaking. It helps me thrive and supports my physical existence. And it is still very conscious and loving and rooted in the kindness for me. And obviously, feel free to disagree, feel free to see it as an excuse. But for me, it's a very balanced experience these days. And I had a period where I was in struggle with this and fighting with myself and trying to become vegetarian again and it would get worse and worse. Like my physical response to that would become more intense. Like the out of alignment sense would be more sensitive at that age later on, like a few years ago. So I've forced myself into acceptance. And so then I can see the balance of love and wisdom. Yes, there is killing happening, but it's not the end of the world. It really is not. When we are rooted in the love vibration, our personalities tend to take that on as sort of this mission for kindness all around. Like this Dalai Lama sort of exuberance that needs to be there, where compassion is king in a certain way. Not realizing that there is depths and layers and subtleties to compassion that go unnoticed by the untrained eye. So we tend to be very obvious about that. Like, okay, this is what is kind, this is what's not kind. And therefore, to get to your question regarding, how do you stated it? There's also a related issue. Would you have a problem with a soldier killing in battle? No, absolutely not. Why would I? There's so many perspectives regarding everything. Regarding every event, there's so many perspectives you can learn to see, and I encourage you to open up and learn to see them all so that you become a being of no bias. And I am primarily, most of the time, in most ways that I can tell, I am a being of no bias. Which doesn't mean it's not the same as not having preferences. It means that when I execute decisions, when I execute choices, the actions that I take, the choices that I make are unbiased. Or highly unbiased. As unbiased as they can be for me, to my level. Why? Because I'm not interested in executing my personality's ideas. In fact, I'm so used to this right now that I don't have my personality's ideas most of the time. There is no personal idea about anything anymore. There is not like, oh, this is my stance on this. There really isn't. Sometimes I play with that as a fun thing, or in my Tourette hour once a month, I take a stance against everything and everyone. That's absolutely... Anyway. But that's not real, you see. That's like, it's an energetic play. It's something that somehow, when it comes up spontaneously, it's fun, especially when it's in the crowd that it is appropriate to have it. And we have a lot of fun, and it's so much laughter, and it's very blissful, and it's very loving towards everyone, even though we, annihilate everyone. It's very cute. At least my experience of it is very sweet. So that's one of the more extreme examples of choosing a personality. But there is no personal bias that feels like me. So when a situation comes up that requires a highly sophisticated, balanced perspective, I am very much able these days to see as many perspectives as I can rather than to jump on something. I'm very non-reactive in that sense. And so, in my experience, the highest wisdom or the highest balance of love and wisdom can actually come through in that experience and can be of service to all involved. Why? Because I'm not interested in my personal point of view. And because I've not been interested in my personal point of view, because I see it's always a limited point of view, and it always leads to limited results that are less than beneficial or less than they could be, because I've been doing that for quite a while now, I don't even have biases anymore in that sense. I have preferences, again, there's a difference, but I don't have biases. So I'm very much balanced in that way, very much able to see a lot of perspective. A lot of the time, it feels like, if you've ever seen The Bourne Identity, where he forgets who he is, it's sort of like becoming human, right? You forget who you are. There's this veil of forgetfulness. And then he sits at this restaurant, and he says to this woman he just met, like, I don't know why, but I know that we're at this altitude and that I can run at this speed for this long. He's like a trained CIA specialist or something like that. And I know that there's so many spoons in this room, and I don't have no idea why I have this knowledge. He forgot all about his history. But I know that I know them. That's very much my experience on a metaphysical level, on an energetic level. Like there's all these perspectives that are floating around all the time that are very effortless for me to tap into. I'm not saying there's even more. I'm not saying I'm omniscient, not at all. I'm saying I see a lot comparatively to what I used to and what I see other people see. So there's a lot of that information. And sometimes I don't know why I see these data points that I see. But I do all that I have to know in that moment is these different perspectives and what feels most balanced and intuitive to me, and then I act accordingly. So when it comes to the soldier in battle, for example, or the kindness thing, I just want to encourage all of you, out of both the tiredness as well as the excitement of my own heart and having spent some time with humanity, that please don't take yourself too seriously. And don't hold on to your ideas. Don't think you know what's right, because honestly, most of you don't. Most of you are not very balanced in love and wisdom. Most of you do not see many points of view regarding the same event, and that's all right. That's okay. But as soon as you realize that, you can start transcending the reactive, biased personal identity. And you can actually become a beacon of love light that is able to quote unquote handle, or rather channel, be conduit to that much more sophisticated group dynamics and energy dynamics and relationships and leadership and what is best and presidency, or whatever you want to get into. Whatever type of sort of position that governs more points of existence. In other words, some kind of leadership position, which doesn't have to be called leadership. It can be you being a parent to a family, right? You being the dude, or you being the wife that takes care of the household. It can be on that level. It doesn't have to be like, oh, there's a leader, or there's a spiritual teacher, or he's the president or the governor. It can be like in everyday relationship, we all take on leadership positions every once in a while. The more you liberate yourself from your own bias, the more grounded, the more balanced, the more you're able to be used as a channel for that, and the more you will be used, just as a heads up, the more you will be used, because it makes sense. You're usable. You're usable, so people will use you. Higher selves will use you. You will be able to even, and don't jump to this prematurely, just let it happen naturally, and let yourself gain confidence in it, and be quite critical of yourself with these circumstances. But I've generated enough scenarios for myself that are really challenging and really paradoxical, and there's no right answer. I've given myself many relationship dynamics and many experiences where there's no right answer, where I see that no matter what decision I come up with, it's never going to be the perfect answer. So I've created that for myself to force myself to fine-tune my consciousness to such an extent that I can be so unbiased, remain so unbiased and impersonal in that scenario that no matter what the outcome is, I'm not attached to it, and I can be able to be utilized in that circumstance by those people as a channel for whatever is the highest outcome. Now, they may either appreciate that or understand that or receive that, or they may not, either way. But when you do this, also you can actually start to, or I'll just keep it to myself. I can sense it when people ask things of me that they are not aware of. And again, be very careful with jumping to this conclusion. I never prematurely, or hopefully never prematurely, jump to this conclusion. But you can start to become so sensitive and so attuned that not only is it unconscious to you that people are utilizing your space, but it becomes conscious as to why and where they're coming from and what they want to get out of that, even when you just meet them, just like that. And again, don't get cocky about this. And if you will, that's all right, because your higher self will iron that out for you. It will make you bump your head a little bit, as it did for me, and as it continues to always fine-tune me, that balance. But it's an interesting phenomena where you can not only be used as a facilitator for whatever is most beneficial intuitively, but you can even start to sense where people are coming from, what they desire, as soon as you meet them. What is probable, what's about to happen. Time becomes more malleable, so you can start to read into probabilities as well. And again, this also trains you to not be personal, because it could be tempting to jump on that personally if you still have a bias, which is great because it pulls the bias out of your system and puts it right there on the table for you to see consciously. But always keep your earnestness, because if you don't, you will feel out of alignment with yourself. If you don't honor your own your integrity towards other beings and respect their free will, you will feel out of alignment. You will feel bad. And you can only maintain that for so long out of a cocky idea that it's somehow benefiting you as a separate self. It will show you that that's not true. So it will iron that out too. And you just continue to become more and more sensitive, more and more aware, just like Jason Bourne, in a sense, on that physical level, knows these things and he doesn't know how he knows them. Similarly, metaphysically and relationally, you will start to see, quote unquote, see or sense or know so many things regarding one similar event that you become unbiased as a being. And overall, I can recommend this, unless it doesn't resonate for you. Then that's not the timing. But it's interesting.